Okay, reflecting back from the game last week, obviously it was very fun to go out and perform after a really good week of practice and the way that we prepared and the urgency that I thought we had as an entire team coming away from a loss a week ago. Thought we really responded well. As always, we talk about takeaways, tackling, and effort. From a takeaway standpoint, we had a pick six, which was really good opportunity that we created there. Fourth down stop as well. Thought we could have had some more takeaways in those situations, but the quarterback really got the ball out of his hands quick. I think some of that was a credit to the pressures that we brought, and he had taken a number of sacks the week before, and I think the emphasis for him was to get the ball out of his hands. From a tackling standpoint, we had 6 missed tackles. With very few yards after contact. I think we were under 20 in yards after contact. And then from an effort standpoint, we had 7 loaves across the entire defense. So the keys to victory said we had to attack our run fits. I thought we were sound in our run fits, did a good job of taking away their base runs early in the game and forced them to kind of go to some other options, which was good. 22 rushes for 51 yards. Win our one-on-one matchups. I thought on the outside, our corners and secondary DBs, safeties played very well. Thought they challenged coverage. I think we've got some very dynamic athletes out there that allow us to take advantage of some one-on-one matchups. They had 94 total yards passing and 50% completion percentage, which obviously is something that's difficult to do this day and age. At times, we did some really good things with the defensive line. We also need to be making sure that we get emphasis of creating separation, though, with our hands, some things that we can clean up there. Said we had to dominate the situational downs, obviously 3 of 14 on third down situations, 1 of 2 on fourth down, which we kind of gave them an opportunity. We had them covered up and just kind of drifted in a fourth down where they got a nice little easy throw that we certainly don't want to allow to happen, and then they got no red zone opportunities. The last thing that we said that we needed to do was each person take it upon themselves to help be the reason why this defense gets better this week. And saw across the board in the preparation, the way that we prepared, thought our guys really took that challenge to heart. Thought that we walked out on that field focused and locked in to execute at a really high level, and I think we accomplished that goal. Moving forward to Michigan State, I think this will be obviously, as we know, these are tough games. These are hard-nosed games against a very good in-conference opponent on our side of the league, averaging just under 30 points a game, rushing for right around 150, 261 passing. Think highly of their young running back, Elijah Collins. I think he runs the ball hard. I think he's getting better and better every week. The offensive line is starting to get more and more comfortable with what they're doing. They've tweaked some things. They've done some things more RPO-driven than what they've done in the past, and yet at the same time, you see they come back to Old Faithful, in the things that they've done that we all know too well in their 12 personnel and some of their 21-picture run game. I think that's always going to be who they are, and they've won a lot of games doing those things. Brian Lewerke's done some things. I think you got to make sure that you do a good job with him and try to keep the heat on him and pressure on him, because I think he's obviously a quarterback that knows where he wants to go with the ball, and he's got confidence out there, and he's got some good receivers that he can put the ball out to. I think Darrell Stewart and Cody White are big-bodied receivers that do a great job of playing the ball in the air. They're good route runners. They know what they're doing. They're very clean, and they make plays when they matter most. I think that's what this team over the years, when you look at them, they make plays when it matters most, and that's what we have to step up to that challenge. Questions?
Coach, with this being the first true road game of the season and having such a young defense, they've obviously improved. Taiwan Mullen, amongst other guys, playing very well. But what can you do to help them prepare for being on the road in the Big Ten?
Yeah, to some degree, I think you just have to go and do that. I don't know how you necessarily can say prepare them for a road game when they've never had a road game before. Road game for Taiwan Mullen was take the school bus, across town and go kick a team's tail. So for him, this will be a very different experience, as it will be for all of our freshmen. Obviously, when you're going into an environment like Michigan State, the excitement that stadium, that their program has, and the things that for us to go play in that opportunity, I would imagine our guys will be ready to go. To me, the number one thing that we can do is focus on us, focus on our process, doing our job, and locking their eyes in, because when everything else is going on, right, Big Ten game and the fan base and a travel game, and I've never done this before, can you lock in and focus on accomplishing your responsibility for one play? And then regardless of what happened on that one play, go back and do it again and again and again. And that'll be the challenge for a young defense for sure.
Coach, I know he was recruited here before you got here, but Michael Ziemba is a guy that's played from day one, played a lot of football here in just, 2+ seasons. What have you seen from him as a defensive guy? What do you like about him as a player?
Well, Mike Ziemba's athleticism is the first thing that strikes you, right? It jumps off the film in just terms of his explosiveness. His ability off the edge has helped shape the edge of our defense. Obviously, teams have to, there's some things that we're doing schematically to take advantage of his speed and tempo and kind of cut him loose a few times and let him go. We've seen the benefits of that already this season. Where he has become a more complete player is keyed in and locked into his run responsibility, and then transitioning that to first and second down pass rush, as well as just letting him cut loose a few times, because when you have dynamic athletes at the defensive end position, him being obviously one of the most talented out of that group, I think you've got to schematically take advantage of that matchup.
Coach, how much have you been able to look back to last year's game with Michigan State and what right and what went wrong there in regards to preparing for this year? Are you seeing enough differences in them for it to not matter as much, or do you still see a lot of it there?
No, it always matters, because they're I guess on both sides of the ball, new coordinators, myself and their offensive coordinators. So, but the systems are still the same, and so they're going to go back and reflect on what worked for them, and we're going to go back and reflect on what worked for us. And then also understand that 2019 brings on new personnel, new scheme, new challenges. So, there's always going to be that, hey, what worked in the past, what didn't work in the past, what do we have to fix, and yet who are we moving forward? And so that's what's fun about playing teams year after year when they have the same system and you do. There's familiarity, and yet at the same time there's always that question of what if, what are they going to do differently than what we haven't seen in the past? And to me as a play caller, that's the joy of being a coordinator,
Coach, I know last week on the podium you said enough is enough, and you guys followed up with a pretty dominant defensive performance against UConn. How do you carry that mindset over when you're facing a Big Ten opponent that might be a little more talented offensively, but how do you get the defense to kind of lock in?
Sure. Well, it was a response, and it was the response that we needed from a young group of players that need to understand the urgency that you have to have every single day at practice, every meeting, every walkthrough rep. And transitioning those reps onto a football field. So that was a big step for us defensively to go respond after the adversity that we had against ourselves. That can't just be one thing, right? Because you can respond and then to take a step back, right, doesn't help us accomplish our goals moving forward. So for me, I think one thing that I really learned and took away as you step back from the adversity of the Ohio State loss was, as a young defense, we have to be very, very process-driven, We don't need to convince our guys, you can do this and you can get this done and yada, yada. Just, we're talented enough. Let's be about us and let's be about our process. And if we can do those things, we'll accomplish the goals that we've set out for ourselves this season. And I think we have a chance to be a very successful defense doing that. Yeah. That I said what? Yeah. Well, I mean, sometimes I don't remember exactly what happens in a game and what doesn't, but I do know that we kind of had a beat on them, what they were going to run in that situation, so we knew that we wanted somebody to get vertical pressure on the dive and have an answer if the quarterback kept the ball. Obviously, those are those plays that you that you draw up. We've worked it. We do those things quite a bit. That's one of our base staple answers. But, you know, when those things come free like that and you finish like that, you always, you know, feel good a little bit as a coordinator. And the guys going and executing that play to that degree. You know, Mike Ziemba and Cam Jones were the two guys that made that play. Obviously, they're two of the most explosive players in our defense. So when we can get vertical penetration in a 3rd and 4th down scenario, with bodies like that, we're going to be successful.
Coach, you mentioned Cam Jones, you mentioned Tywan Mullen, young guys, freshmen, sophomores, who we're starting to see impact from. Why do you think we're starting to see impact from those two classes while they are just freshmen and sophomores?
Well, I think we've made a commitment, you know, I mean, to getting those guys. I mean, back in the springtime and fall and summer, fall camp, all those things, we've built everything around a young defense, knowing that we have a young defense and knowing that we've got to be able to execute at a high level with those young players. So you can't do too much, but you also can't be so predictable and simple that, you know, that you can get out schemed. And so for us, I think it's investing time, reps, energy, and building the scheme around a young defense. When you have the talent like Cam Jones, Tywan Mullen, the list goes on of young players that are really the core nucleus of our defense and hopefully will be for the next few years to come, it's so important that you keep them in mind with everything that we do in our system. And I think that we are accomplishing that to this point. Not to say that they're not going to make mistakes and not that adversity is going to happen. You know, I think Ohio State was a great example and a reminder of focusing in on your keys when things don't always go right. And so, but those guys learned that lesson, you know what I mean? And hopefully they took it to heart and will carry that moving forward, not just in this season, but the rest of their careers.
Coach, I think you talked about it, and Coach talked about after the Ohio State game, one of the maybe kind of the issues was getting calls in and so guys could get lined up and all that. How tough is that you want to try to get the right call with teams playing up tempo, but also giving your guys enough time to kind of get settled and do their job without thinking? I mean, did you guys change anything this past week? Or
I think not so much change anything. I think sometimes there's things that I need to be careful now, knowing a little bit better about how our D-line reacts to certain pressures and calls that I make. There's certain things that I probably would not call or will not call moving forward that I tried to get in against some pressure, you know what I mean? And even though those back-end guys may have it and be ready for it, you know, it's always hardest with the defensive line. And so just keeping that in mind for myself, you know, some guys can do it, some guys can't, knowing what personnel is on the field and knowing, okay, at this point, I've got to get these calls in as opposed to some other things that I probably tried to do.